That sounds good.
We have to sing comfort, comfort, oh my people at some point.
We do. We do.
And the other
Um,
hymns are more directly related to the series theme of Starlight. Okay, now we have a number of more people getting on here.
that's good.
Joan's on, Barb and Jake. Sharon Baker is back. Uh, looks like Jay and Angela, or Angela at least.
Okay, should we go to scripture? Um,
Sure.
there's there's offering, and feel free to make your donations. Oops. I somehow got bumped out. Heidi, can you help me?
You're in. We can
I
see
am.
you.
We can hear you,
Yeah.
Dennis, and see
Um,
you.
now there's an echoing.
I think you're
Can you hear
okay
me
now.
now?
I can hear you, and it's sounding fine.
It's
It's
sounding
sounding
fine
fine
because I'm
because I'm
getting an
getting an
echo
echo
here.
here.
Okay, the scripture today is Psalm 19, 1 through 4a. The heavens declare the glory of God, the skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day they pour forth speech, night after night they display knowledge. There is no speech or language where their voice is not heard. Their voice goes out into all the earth, their words to the ends of the world. Is that it, Vern?
Yes, that is it. And if everybody can make sure you're muted if you're not talking, that will prevent some of the echoing, I think. And also, I want to highlight that this meeting is being live streamed, just so you know. Um, all right, so now we will go to the sermon. Okay, so our theme is Starlight for Advent. And we'll be talking about that theme using the poetry of Psalm 19 for 3 weeks at least. And then I don't know what Mary Springer Phrase will be doing. And then we will make a connection also in our Christmas Eve service. So that's our theme for Advent, um, as we set it at the worship committee. All right. So when I was a child in Ulysses, Kansas, down in the southwest corner of Kansas, you could see the brilliant Milky Way galaxy on any clear night. We don't need the first slide yet, but that's okay if you put it up. Even at the vacant lot beside our house on the edge of our small town, there was so little light pollution that the skies were vividly clear. And a few years ago, we did a dark sky walk at the Grand Canyon. I don't know if any of you have ever done that, but it's really amazing. The Milky Way was even more brilliant than in my childhood sky. You felt like you could just fall into the stars, that it was all part of a vast and glorious web of life. And then we may realize that we are just on the edge of one galaxy and that there are billions of galaxies. According to one Wikipedia estimate, there are 100 billion galaxies, each full of millions and millions of stars. So it's just amazing. And I have many links for these different kinds of scientific facts in my blog. So if you go to my blog and look at the sermon manuscript, you can look up these links later on if you want to. What a joy it is to be nurtured on starlight, as I was as a kid in Ulysses, Kansas. I just loved it. And so starlight is the theme of our Advent series for this year. And in particular, we're going to be looking at the universe through the lenses of Psalm 19 with its poetry, and also through the lens of astrophysics. So that's right. How often do you get a sermon that is a combination of Psalm 19 and astrophysics? So here we are. And then, of course, there is the star over Bethlehem. And I have always loved that story of the star over Bethlehem. It's one of my favorite images for Christmas, where you have the star with one beam of light radiating down toward the stable, indicating the child of peace who is being born there. And also maybe it feels a bit like the star is offering a blessing. So it's just a beautiful image. So for me, it's a perfect season to move between science and poetry. I really love it for that reason. All right, the heavens are telling the glory of God. This is the poetry of the Psalm, of Psalm 19. Now, let's look a little bit at this poetry from the perspective of science. Oh, our cats decided this is a good time to get really active on the rattly ball here. So anyway, the heavens are telling. In his book, The Universe in Creation, Roy R. Gould speaks about the forces that animate nature. And I want to mention that Roy R. Gould is the astrophysicist for the Smithsonian Institute and also a professor at Harvard University. So he may know a thing or two about astrophysics. This wonderful book that he has written talks about how the universe tells a story. So that's going to be one of my main sources. Although if you look on my manuscript, you'll see quite a number of sources listed for this sermon and for this series. The three forces of nature are, and I would have you guess them if we were in person, because I could do a Jeopardy question at this point, but the three forces are gravity, electromagnetism, and the nuclear force. Those are the three primary forces that animate the universe, according to Roy R. Gould, of gravity, electromagnetism, and the nuclear force. He says gravity rules the cosmos, which is fairly self-evident. Electromagnetism, however, organizes our molecules. So electromagnetism is the close-in force. And then the nuclear force is what holds the nucleuses of atoms together. So it is the force that is operative in the very small world. And of course, it's also the force that has unfortunately been unleashed in nuclear bombs. It may be useful to us if we can ever figure out a good way to use it for nuclear energy. But it is the force of the very, very small. All right. Everything is being formed out of the same natural forces. Everything that exists. All the forces that are in your neighborhood are governed by these three forces. Even in your refrigerator, which is, of course, where I have an example. I think that perhaps I told you this before. You may know this story. But once we put a cup of warm coffee with cream in it into our refrigerator to keep it for a while. And this happened back when we lived in Lancaster, so many years ago. Had coffee with cream, and we put it in the fridge. And then later on, we took out the coffee, the cooled coffee, to rewarm it. And we were astonished to see that the cream had formed a perfect bar spiral galaxy on top of the coffee. It was amazing. It looked like some astrophysicist barista had made a bar spiral galaxy. And here is the picture of the bar spiral galaxy, not the one from our coffee, of course, but this is what it looked like. Very beautiful galactic picture. In my manuscript, I also include a video of someone who actually videotaped this same thing happening. It's there. We're not ready for the next slide yet, but there is no video to show you now. But the video somewhat shows you. It's not as clear as ours was, but it gives you. But you can actually watch the bar spiral galaxy being formed in real time on that YouTube video. So it's really cool that other people have also seen that. Okay, that's a note from science. Now back to the Psalms. J. Clinton McCann Jr., in his introduction to the Psalms, notes that the Psalms articulate God's will for justice, for righteousness, and for peace, for all God's people and all nations. And so his point is the Psalms are not just little David playing on his harp, you know. In this, maybe the stereotype of Psalms is that most of them are like songs that David played on his harp, and they're nice. But McCann says, no, the Psalms are actually a comprehensive statement about God's presence in human history and in creation and in all of creation. And this is from the Interpreter's Dictionary, New Interpreter's Dictionary of the Bible, the introduction to the Psalms. And again, you can see more detailed references to this if you look up my manuscript. I give page numbers and so on. But regarding Psalm 19 in particular, McCann notes that C.S. Lewis, who I think we all know about, thought that Psalm 19 was the greatest of all the Psalms. He thought it was the most lyrical, the most beautiful psalm. And it is amazing. The heavens are telling the glory of God. And of course, you may also know that Haydn, in his creation oratorio, has the beautiful setting, the beautiful musical setting, which I guess I will sing for you a little bit. The heavens are telling the glory of God. So if that sounds somewhat familiar, only maybe not in my baritone. That's from Haydn in his creation oratorio, and it is just gorgeous. It's one of the most gorgeous classical pieces I think that there is, and it's inspired by this psalm, which C.S. Lewis considered to be the greatest of all psalms, the most lyrical. All right. Oh yeah, I thought I was missing a page, but my printer just put an extra blank page in between. Okay. The other thing that McCann notes is he said he's reading between the lines, but he says in Psalm 19, it does something extraordinary, which is to affirm that love is actually the basic reality of the universe. Now, the word love does not appear anywhere in Psalm 19, but I would suggest if you feel like it, read the psalm to yourself at some point and see if you agree with McCann that it affirms that love is at the heart of all creation. So that's just his reading of it. In any case, the Psalms are an affirmation of justice and righteousness and peace, and we will also add love, for all people and for all nations. Now, we also know that the Psalms have a lot of stuff in them. They have a lot of pain, a lot of darkness. And so Walter Brueggemann, another Old Testament scholar, notes that the Psalms are clear that often our pathway to joy is through great pain. and is through darkness. And that also is important because it doesn't do to just exhort each other to be happy when we have nuclear weapons pointed at us. That's one of the things Walter Brueggemann talks about. So how do we find our way to joy even in the midst of a world that is still committed to great lethal force? And I forgot to look which year Brueggemann was writing that, but I suspect it was in the late 90s. But I'm going to have to, oh, you know what? I bet I have the book right here. I do. Here it is. The Message of the Psalms, Walter Brueggemann. And let's see. 1984. So it's even further back. It was long ago, but Marilyn and I were already married. So everything has happened since we've been married. That's how long we've been married. The world turned from black and white to color, you know, all of that. Okay. So, all right. So let's continue with our psalm, but now we are going to blend science and poetry. And again, you heard it here first, so be excited. Let's take a further step and look at poetry and science from the perspective of infinity. So we're going to go to infinity and beyond. Everybody know what that's from? Toy Story, the movie. Okay. Our psalm today has an amazing paradox. This is my very favorite paradox in the entire Bible, I think. Maybe some of you have other paradoxes you're thinking of, but this one I love. Day to day pours forth speech, and night to night declares knowledge. There is no speech, nor are there words. Their voice is not heard, yet their voice goes out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that wild? It's like, is there a voice or isn't there a voice? And the psalm in poetic paradox just says both. It doesn't even try to reconcile them. It just says they are both there. And I think that's so cool. Now, my go-to guy for talking about beauty and infinity is David Bentley Hart, Greek Orthodox theologian. And he has a great way of talking about this poem. And again, you can see more detail in my blog, although it looks like I forgot to put the page number in on this one. Let me see. Boy, I've got a lot of blank pages here. Huh. I think my printer is making a comment about my sermon. I'm not sure what it is, putting blank pages in. Anyway, David Bentley Hart in like page 280 or something like that, I'll have to look it up, says this. He says, it is not as a great silence which is destitute of speech, but as the fullness of utterance, a sounding silence. How about that? A sounding silence. That's what David Bentley Hart says. Of utter fullness. It's a sounding silence of utter fullness. God's entire depth is expressed as the agile radiance of the Holy Spirit. That's an amazing way, I think, of talking about this psalm. A sounding silence that is an expression of the agile radiance of the Holy Spirit. But what I would like to add also is that the paradox simply is not easily comprehensible because it is a paradox that reflects the infinity of God's creation. It is beyond all our imagining. And I want to talk about that a little bit because I think the paradox in the Psalms exists because the psalmist is trying to talk about the infinity of the beauty of God. All right. So, for example, here are some other paradoxes that exist in astrophysics science. In the cosmos, there are both impossibly distant and impossibly close things. With quantum entanglement and a little poetic license, but only a little, you can say that the star at the edge of the galaxy and my heartbeat are fully connected. With quantum entanglement, you can say that the star at the edge of the galaxy and any of our heartbeats are fully connected. That's amazing. They are both utterly distant and at the same time completely close. And that is a scientific insight. It's a scientific reality, but it feels like it can only be expressed as a paradox, fully distant and fully close. That's just one example. Okay, here's another example. And this one isn't quite a paradox, but it is an interesting puzzle. It is that light is both really fast and, in another way, light is really slow. Light is so fast that if you travel at the speed of light, time for you will stand still. And this, of course, was Einstein's discovery of relativity. That if you traveled at the speed of light, which nobody has, as far as we know, time for you would stand still. At the same time, light is so slow that when we look out into the universe, we are actually looking into the distant past, because it has taken so long for what we are looking at, for the light of what we are looking at to arrive here. Light is so slow that when we look out at any star, we are looking years, if not thousands of years, into the past. That's a very difficult and interesting thing to try to comprehend. It's kind of like the psalm. How can there be both silence and speech? There are just all of these paradoxes. Okay. Now, have you all seen Star Trek Voyager? I assume you are all Trekkies like we are. No? All right, fair enough. In Star Trek Voyager, the Starship Enterprise ends up on the opposite side of our galaxy in the Delta Quadrant, as it's called in the show. And it turns out there actually are quadrants of our galaxy. They just often call them just 1, 2, 3, and 4, but Delta Quadrant sounds cooler. The thing is, the starship couldn't get back easily because it would take a lifetime for them to come back, even at multiple speeds of light. That's how distant the galaxy is. And I wish I could ask you this trivia question in person, but I will just tell you, this is just one galaxy. It takes light 100,000 years to travel from the center of our galaxy to us, or to the edge of the galaxy. We're not quite on the edge of the galaxy, but according to what I have read, and you can look this up and verify it, it takes light 100,000 years. So when we are seeing the center of our galaxy, it's 100,000 years ago. Now, that may seem like a long time ago, but just wait until you hear what's coming next in a moment. Not quite there yet. These are great exercises in trying to comprehend infinity. Paradox, these remarkable distances are great exercises in opening our minds to infinity. Now, why do we want to open our minds to infinity? Well, I think it is one pathway to a more mature faith. It is a pathway to understanding that God and God's beauty and the created beauty around us is amazing. It's so full of wonder that we cannot completely comprehend it. And so in that way, it's kind of like the Greek Orthodox notion of the cloud of unknowing. We simply cannot know. And with that comes awe And with that comes humility. And those are wonderful spiritual attributes, humility and awe. So that's partly why I submit these exercises in infinity to you. Or we can do more mundane things like counting the number of leaves that have fallen in your town. So go ahead and undertake that project. Or you can do like Abraham and Sarah and try to number the stars. In Genesis 15, God invites them to number the stars. And that is the amount of blessing that will come to them. So the Bible also likes to play with infinity. Okay. I don't know about you, but I think this stuff is absolutely cool. I just think it's so amazing. These are all exercises to open our minds to infinity and thereby to open our minds to humility and awe. All right, let's keep going with science for a bit. All right, next slide, please, Wilmer. Okay, what are we looking at here? This is an actual photo of the universe from 13.7 billion years ago. It was taken at the Planck Observatory looking into distant space, and it looks like an undifferentiated white field, which we will see that it is not, but it's what it looks like at this magnification. So this is an actual photo of the universe 13.7 billion years ago. Because light is so slow, that's how long it takes. So this photo is, by some estimates, taken 300,000 years after the birth of the universe. So a long time ago, but not at the very beginning. All right. Now, let's look at this same patch of universe today. Next slide, please. Ta-da! This image is from maybe only about 400,000 years ago. So in cosmic time, it's very recent. So we will say this is how the universe looks today, as opposed to 13.7 billion years ago. And so now the universe is full of galaxies, and this is the Perseus galaxy cluster. Also a picture taken at the Planck Observatory. And it's just amazing. It's so beautiful, this cluster of galaxies. And in cosmic terms, this cluster of galaxies is very close to us, only 400,000 light years away. So not too bad. Okay, it is the glory of God, according to the Psalm. It is how we understand God to be, living in the spirit of love that inhabits and infuses all things. Now, here's something cool. That white field that we initially showed is actually not evenly white. It's lumpy. Next slide, please. Okay, this is the exact same photo from the Planck Observatory, but magnified 1,000 times. So here we can see that when the universe was only 300,000 years old, it already was all lumpy. One way to think about these lumps is that they are seeds of everything that exists. And I haven't gone into the research for exactly how this works, but I would like to. But it's because of quantum forces that the universe is lumpy instead of smooth. Now, Roy Gould's point is that if the universe were really smooth, nothing would exist. It would have just all stayed the same. But because of this lumpiness, this miraculous lumpiness that exists in the early universe, everything starts to form out of it because of one of the great forces of the universe, which is gravity. Starts pulling things together. Okay, All right. Let's see. Okay, next slide, please. And this is the same part of the universe, only today. That's kind of a joke, but anywhere you look, we are part of that lumpy picture that has now become something like this. And these are all slides, by the way, from Roy R. Gould's book. So he's the one that's kind of having his little joke about how the lumpiness of the early universe has now turned into grandpa and grandma's house, maybe, something like that. All right. The heavens, as the psalm says, are telling the glory of God. All right, one last bit. And this is, what are the implications of all of this for how we live our lives? Well, David Bentley Hart says that the psalm is intended to be a discourse on the revelatory beauty of God. And he says, and in David Bentley Hart's language, he says, what is deplored is those who fail to glorify God, so to speak. And the failure can be described as a lack of an aesthetic response. Now, I'm sure we have all been to an art museum and at some point thought, what the heck is that? Like, why, why, artist? Why would you do that? But at other times, we have been to the art museum and we have been amazed. We have just been awed by what we see, or maybe even by some of the paintings that we have in front of our church, like Wilmer's beautiful painting that he did, or Jeannie's Lion and the Lamb, or the many different kinds of other paintings that people have offered. It is just astonishing. And David Bentley Hart says that the heart of a good spirituality is an aesthetic appreciation of God's creation. And to fail to see that beauty is a massive spiritual failure. David Bentley Hart, the beauty of the infinite. And here's the other thing that amazes me about David Bentley Hart, because he says the ability to appreciate the beauty in God's creation is actually a condition for understanding the peace of Christ. Because the peace of Christ is cradled, if you will, in an ability to appreciate the beauty of all things. And so we may imagine that our ability to take it into our hearts is a key condition. In other words, if we run roughshod over God's creation, we are going to miss the peace of Christ. And I think you may be able to begin to perceive what Hart is talking about there. When we are unable to pay good attention to the beauty of God's universe, it also can make us create the conditions for violence. And so Christ's peace is cradled in the beauty of God's creation. In this way, when we say the heavens are telling the glory of God, it is in fact talking about love, as McCann talks about it. It is in fact talking about peace and justice and righteousness. Okay, so now we have gone to infinity and beyond, perhaps. And by the way, I love that phrase, infinity and beyond, because it's an impossible paradox. So that's the last. It's a mathematic impossibility. It's like dividing something by zero. Can't do it. But it's fun to think about. All right. I think that all we will do now is, if you have comments or responses to that we can do that at this point, and then that will be our service for today, except for a blessing at the end. But let's just go to any comments, if any, that you might have. I either completely puzzled you or completely satisfied you or something else.
Maybe all of the above. I just, to think in these terms that you presented today, uh, how small we are in our little world compared to the world that exists out there in the universe. It's an overwhelming thing sometimes, but it's awe-inspiring also at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah, I may get into this in one of my next two sermons, because this is just the first one of three, which probably means nobody will come back to church next week. They're like, I don't know what he's doing with that astrophysics stuff. But one of the things I have found a lot of comfort in, when thinking about my parents dying and about thinking of loved ones dying in general, is to consider the stars. And I had a friend who who actually died a few years after he said this, but he said that for him, meditating on the stars was his most comforting spiritual meditation, and I always was struck by that.
This also makes me think more about what we don't know. We think we know a lot, but there's a lot that we probably. John knows a lot, he says. But like medieval times, oh, they didn't know anything. They're probably hundreds of years from now. Oh, they didn't know anything. if we're still around.
Yeah, and that's why I love the idea that one of the lessons of the psalm and of astrophysics is humility. And I think that's such a powerful notion for our political moment right now, and in all of our personal relationships, of course. Unless you're married to somebody who knows a lot, which, some of us are, but poor John. The idea of awe and humility, I think, is just remarkable. Awe is kind of the expression of response to beauty or wonder, and humility is that not knowing. And I would say every good science book I have ever read always says there is a lot we don't know, but here's what we are currently thinking. And that is really good science.
Vern, I wonder if you would just restate what your theme is for this series, and the descriptor you put in the email before this Sunday of what that theme is.
Oh, I don't remember what I put in the email, but the theme is starlight. Oh, I think I said it's looking at the question of God's creation through the lenses of poetry and astrophysical science. And astrophysics, of course, is simply the physics of the stars. Astro, stars, and physics, astrophysics. But yes, that's the theme, is to try to bring together the poetry of Psalm 19 in particular, and we will actually just be walking through the first half of Psalm 19 in these three sermons. and some of the insights from astrophysics. And I don't know if any of you like reading books like this, but I really highly recommend the book, The Universe in Creation by Roy R. Gould. It's a presentation of astrophysical science, kind of like what I have heard or I've read about in other places, but he has a very unique way of presenting it by saying that the universe is trying to tell us a story. And I think that is such an interesting approach, a way of framing it. And it fits with the Psalm. It fits with Psalm 19 so well. The universe is telling. Does anybody have any of their own favorite looking at the stars memories? Like my childhood memory of looking at the Milky Way or the Grand Canyon. Anybody else have star or planet or moon memories, astrophysical memories?
Well, I would just say that before we had an indoor toilet up at the cabin, if I had to get up in the middle of the night and go outside, it was just scary. The stars, it was just so overwhelming. You just felt that. I mean, scary in a good way. Yeah.
Yeah, I said in connection with the Grand Canyon story that it felt like you could just fall into the stars.
Yeah.
Or maybe they could fall onto you too. I mean, that would be another option. But it feels like they are close enough to touch, and that's just a remarkable thing.
Yeah.
Well, and I have to think that's why it's so important that this Dark Skies initiative that is being accepted across the country is such a good thing, and that towns are trying to reduce the amount of light at night that disturbs viewing the stars, to have lights like in parking lots that stay on all night, that are situated down so that they don't disturb the light. And I've understood that also it has an effect on bird behavior. The dark skies helps birds in terms of flying and migrating and so on. So I'm really glad about that we're becoming more mindful of not needing to have so much light on at night as we have in the past.
Yeah, and I think also it influences insects. Some insects, I don't know about butterflies. That may all be magnetic navigation, but I think they are also somewhat affected by light in some cases. But in any case, it's not great for the natural world to just be flooded in artificial light.
No.
And one of the great examples, if you want to experience it, is Flagstaff, Arizona. They've been a dark sky city for a number of years already. And of course, part of that was inspired by the Lowell Observatory being there. But they have all hooded lights that only shine down and at not too brilliant an amount of light.
I don't drive much at night, but about a month or so ago, I had to be in Colorado Springs at night, and I hadn't driven in Colorado Springs at night for a long time. And I was amazed at how dark it was compared to what I remembered it. I almost felt lost because I was, expecting, office buildings and so on to be brightly lit and parking lots. And I could really tell a difference, but it had been a while since I had driven in Colorado Springs. So that was encouraging.
Yeah, that's great. And I think one of the tourist slogans for Kansas should be "Come and see our dark sky,"
Yeah.
because a lot of Kansas has, of course, so much empty space, but because of that, it has immense dark sky.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Of course, so do the deserts of Arizona. If you drive between Albuquerque and Flagstaff, pretty amazing. I wonder how many truckers are stargazers, because it seems like driving a truck would get you out at night and
Yeah.
and it would make you have a lot of opportunity to be a stargazer.
Ask Jake.
Yeah, Connie was pointing at Jake, but nobody saw her.
I I guess I'm unmuted. Yeah, I thought about that because I run across 40 a lot of times, and there was just one place that just stood out that it was really weird. It was the power plant at St. Joseph. You'd go by that would be all lit up, but otherwise it was just, yeah, saw too many stars at night. But it is, there's areas. And when we were growing up, it was the same way. We were out in the country and no lights. And then we got a yard light, and that kind of messed things up. But I remember looking at the one, I guess my favorite, I don't know if it's a constellation or it's the Pleiades. I remember looking, always trying to spot that and how it moved during different times of the year and where it was located in the sky. But and I do think I've always looked for Orion's belt, and I think I finally found it because I think it's just the way the trees are. It blocks everything else out, and I can actually see kind of at the house here. I can see where I'm pretty sure it's Orion's belt. I never could find that before.
Yeah, those are two features that I used to look for as a kid too. Of course, besides the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper, but I always loved Orion's belt because I think one of the stars in it is a red giant. And so that was an interesting thing to think about. You can't really see it. I mean, probably with a good telescope you could. And then Pleiades is gorgeous. And I had forgotten, I'm glad you mentioned that because I used to look at Pleiades through my telescope, which wasn't great. But even with that moderate magnification, Pleiades is just really stunning to see. Which I think is also called the Seven Sisters, maybe, Pleiades. Yeah.
Burn. Was it startling?
Okay, you get the pun for the day. All right, anything else, or should we wrap this up? Okay,
I just have sort of a housekeeping question. I understood that H2O was going to decorate the church for Christmas yesterday, and I was there this morning. They had not done anything.
I think it's because of the heat problem,
Okay.
which I didn't realize we were having. Sean had asked me about it last week, and I said, "Well, I don't know about any problem with the heat." And I said, "As far as I know, we're planning to meet." And then, of course, we are having trouble. So anyway, we'll have to figure out. We got to get that window closed and figure out what's going on. But
Yeah.
I think that's why it's not decorated.
Okay.
They also are not meeting this morning, of course.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Well,
I have a-
Oh.
when is When is Mary
Springer phrase.
Springer phrase preaching?
When?
The 21st
Okay,
of December.
got it. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm preaching the next 2 Sundays. Next Sunday will hopefully be in Palmer Lake unless we don't have heat. We can always come up to Dry Creek if nothing else. But planning to be in Palmer Lake next week, and then the week after that, planning to be in Dry Creek. And then the week after that, it would be Mary Sprunger Phrase in Palmer Lake. And then after that, it's our Christmas Eve service in Palmer Lake.
Wow.
So I don't know how many shopping days are left before.
Hey, what day is Christmas Eve?
It's like the question, what day is Cinco de Mayo this year?
Hello, girl. Long to meet you. Is she?
Okay, anything else? All right, well, I am sorry to not be able to gather with you in person today, but really great to see your faces, and thank you for the sharing, and we'll look forward to seeing you. And if you have any comments or questions, follow up, please don't hesitate to email me or text me. And I think you all know where to find my blog, but you can see the unimprovised manuscript there, which will look a little different than what I said this morning because I always change things at the last minute. But
We'll close this curtain, okay?
But
Yeah.
yeah, anyway. All right. So blessings to you all, and we'll look forward to another week.
Have a good